OSHA Training Institute, Module 14, Hazardous Material. Section 1910.101A, Compressed Gases. Inspection of all compressed gas cylinders. Visual and other inspections. DOT 49 CFR Part 171-179 and 14 CFR Part 103 if applicable. Otherwise, Compressed Gas Association Pamphlet C-6-1968 and C-8-1962, applicable to suppliers and distributors filling compressed gas cylinders. Cylinder types: high pressure, low pressure, acetylene, fusible plugs, cryogenic. Gas suppliers advise users to check cylinders as they are received, verify labels, tags, and shipping papers, reject and return cylinders with obvious damage, determine required caps and plugs in place. Section CGA C-6-1968. 3.2.6 Bulges. Cylinders are manufactured with reasonably symmetrical shapes. Cylinders which have definite bulges shall be removed from service. Example: bulged cylinder wall failure. 5.3.7 Fire damage. Cylinders shall be carefully inspected for evidence of exposure to fire. Evidence includes charring or burning of paint, burning or scarfing of the metal, distortion of the cylinder, burning or melting of a valve. Examples given: burn, cut, gouge with deposit of weld metal, gouge. General corrosion with pitting, reducing cylinder strength. Section continued: compressed gases. The in-plant handling, storage, and utilization of all compressed gases in cylinders, portable tanks, rail tank cars, or motor vehicle cargo tanks shall be in accordance with Compressed Gas Association CGA Pamphlet P-1-1965. CGA P-1-1965 Section 3.1 General. 3.1.14 Never tamper with the safety relief devices in valves or cylinders. 3.1.15 Never attempt to repair or to alter cylinders, valves, or safety relief devices. Section continued. 3.1.16 Never use cylinders as rollers, support, or for any other purpose than to contain the contents as received. Section continued. 3.1.17 Keep cylinder valves closed at all times, except when cylinder is in active use. 3.1.18 Notify cylinder owner if any condition might have permitted any foreign substance to enter the cylinder or valve. Provide detail of incident. Provide the cylinder serial number. General section continued. 3.1.19 Do not place cylinders where they might become part of an electric circuit. When cylinders are used in conjunction with electric welding, precautions must be taken against accidentally grounding cylinders or allowing them to be burned by electric welding arc. Section P-1, 3.2, Moving Cylinders. 3.2.2, do not lift cylinders by the cap. 3.2.3, never drop cylinders nor permit them to strike against each other or against other surfaces violently. P-1, Section 3.2, Moving Cylinders. 3.2.4, never handle a cylinder with a lifting magnet. 3.2.5, avoid dragging or sliding cylinders. Moving cylinders continued. 3.2.6, use suitable hand truck, fork truck, roll platform, or similar device with cylinder firmly secured for transporting and unloading. Storing cylinders continued. 3.3.6, do not store cylinders near highly flammable substances such as oil, gasoline, or combustible waste. Fire is a threat to containment. Storing cylinders continued. 3.3.8, do not store cylinders near elevators or gangways or in locations where heavy moving objects may strike or fall on them. Withdrawing cylinder content. 3.4.2, if cylinder content is not identified by marking, return cylinder to the supplier without using. Withdrawing cylinder content continued. 3.4.4, before using a cylinder, be sure it is properly supported to prevent it from being knocked over. 3.4.5, suitable pressure regulating device must be used. Withdrawing cylinder content continued. 3.4.6, never force connections. 3.4.7, where compressed gas cylinders are connected to a manifold, all related equipment, such as regulators, must be of proper design. Section 3.4.8, do not mix regulators, gauges, hoses, or other appliances provided for use with a particular gas or group of gases with incompatible material/gases. Safe work practices. Open cylinder slowly. Point valve opening away from yourself or others. Never use wrenches or tools except those provided by the supplier or approved by the gas manufacturer. Avoid the use of a wrench on a valve equipped with a hand wheel. Safe work practices continued. Never hammer on the valve wheel. For frozen, corroded valves, contact the supplier. Use check valves if cylinder is apt to be contaminated by feedback of material. Before removing a regulator, close the cylinder valve and release all the pressure from the regulator. Flammable gases. Indoor cylinder storage. Well protected, well insulated, dry, 20 feet from flammable or combustible materials. Flammable gases continued. 3.5.1, do not store cylinders near highly flammable solvents, combustible waste material, and similar substances, or near unprotected electrical connections, gas flames, or other sources of ignition. 3.5.2 Never use a flame to detect flammable gas leaks. Use soapy water. Section 3.6 Poison gases. 3.6.1 Personnel handling and using poison gases should have available for immediate use gas masks or self-contained breathing apparatus approved by the U.S. Bureau of Mines for the particular service desired. Note, this approval for respirator has been updated to the requirements of NIOSH. Acetylene. Cylinders. In-plant transfer, handling, storage, and utilization of acetylene in cylinders shall be in accordance with Compressed Gas Association Pamphlet G-1-1966. Case report. A fitter with a work van left an E-size oxygen and acetylene cylinder on the back seat of a Toyota dual cab over the weekend. The acetylene cylinder must not have fully closed and a small leak occurred. Over the weekend, the acetylene had accumulated in the van. Case report part 2. On the Monday morning, after the fitter approached the van and opened the door, a large explosion took place. We believe the ignition could have been caused by either the internal light, the automatic door control, or by a mobile phone which was on the front seat of the van. The fellow was also a smoker. He has damage to his eardrums and facial damage. As you can see by the attached photo, he was very lucky. This slide is of the explosion resulting from an ignition source. Why was this dangerous? Flammability limits. Lower, 2.5%. Upper, 100%. An extremely wide range. Use or store only in a well-ventilated area. Inside of the truck is not well ventilated. NFPA ratings: health 1, flammability 4, reactivity 3. Hydrogen. Each portable container shall be legibly marked with the name hydrogen in accordance with ANSI Z48.1-1954. Installation of hydrogen systems shall be supervised by personnel familiar with proper practices with reference to their construction and use. Gaseous hydrogen systems. Marking. The hydrogen storage location shall be permanently placarded as follows: hydrogen, flammable gases, no smoking, no open flames, or equivalent. Flammable and combustible liquids. Purpose of standard. This standard applies to the handling, storage, and use of flammable and combustible liquids with a flash point FP below 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Purpose of standard continued. Primary hazards associated with flammable and combustible liquids, explosion, and fire. To prevent these hazards, this standard addresses the primary concerns. design and construction, ventilation, ignition sources, and storage. Flash point. The minimum temperature at which a liquid gives off vapor within a test vessel in sufficient concentration to form an ignitable mixture with the air near the surface of the liquid. Flash point is normally an indication of susceptibility to ignition. Combustible liquid. Any liquid having a flash point, FP, at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37.8 degrees Celsius. Divided into two classes. Class 2 liquids. Flash point between 100 degrees Fahrenheit and 140 degrees, 60 degrees Celsius. Class 3 liquids. Flash point at or above 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Class 3A. Flash point between 140 Fahrenheit and 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 93.3 Celsius. Class 3B. Flash point at or above 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Flammable liquids. Any liquid having a flash point below 100 degrees Fahrenheit, also known as Class 1 liquids. Class 1A, FP 73 degrees Fahrenheit, BP 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Class 1B, FP 73 degrees, BP 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Class 1C, flash point between 73 degrees and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This slide gives examples of flash points in Fahrenheit. Please take time to examine it. Safety can, an approved container, 5 gallons or less, with a spring closing lid, with a spout covered, designed to safely relieve internal pressure when subjected to fire exposure. Ventilation, as specified in this section, for the prevention of fire and explosion. Considered adequate if it is sufficient to prevent accumulation of significant quantities of vapor-air mixtures in concentrations over 1/4 of the lower flammable limit. Flammable explosive limits. When vapors of a flammable or combustible liquid are mixed with air in the proper proportions in the presence of a source of ignition, rapid combustion or an explosion can occur. The proper proportion is called flammable range or explosive range. Flammable explosive limits continued. Flammable range includes all concentrations of flammable vapor or gas in air in which a flash will occur or a flame will travel if the mixture is ignited. Please take time to examine the explosive pressure range slide below. Tank storage. 1. Design and construction of tanks. 2. Installation of outside above-ground tanks. Spacing. Normal venting. 4. Emergency relief venting. Vent piping. Drainage, dikes, and walls. Tank openings other than vents. Tank storage continued. 3. Installation of underground tanks. 4. Installation of tanks inside of buildings. 5. Supports, foundations, and anchorage. 6. Sources of ignition. 7. Testing. Piping, valves, and fittings. Suitable for expected pressures and stresses. Not applicable to oil/gas, well tubing, casing, or piping connected directly. Materials: joints, supports, corrosion protection, valves. Testing. Container and portable tank storage. Storage of flammable or combustible liquid in drums or other containers, including flammable aerosols, not exceeding 60 gallons individual capacity, and portable tanks, not exceeding 660 gallons individual capacity. Containers and portable tank storage continued. Not applicable in bulk plants, service stations, refineries, chemical plants. Only approved containers and portable tanks shall be used. Metal containers or portable tanks meeting DOT hazardous materials regs are okay. Flammable storage cabinets. Not more than 60 gallons of Class 1 and or Class 2 liquids or 120 gallons of Class 3 liquids may be stored in an individual cabinet, labeled conspicuously. Are there flammable chemicals outside this cabinet? Inside storage rooms. Inside storage rooms constructed and wired for potential hazards must be ventilated. Complete change of air at least 6 times per hour. Aisles necessary. Egress. Flammable or combustible liquids shall not be stored so as to limit use of exits, stairways, or areas normally used for the safe egress of people. Fire control. Extinguishers available. Open flames and smoking not permitted in flammable or combustible liquid storage areas. Water reactive materials not stored in same room. Example, no smoking sign. Industrial facilities in 1910.106. Industrial plants. Limited see scope. Bulk plants. Receive, store, blend, distribute. Service stations. Refineries, chemical plants, and distilleries. General principles. Control evaporation, particularly in closed spaces. Prepare to dispose of spills quickly and safely. Prevent the ignition of flammable vapors. Ground and bond containers to prevent against static electricity discharge. Sources of ignition. Open flames. Lightning. Smoking. Cutting and welding. Hot surfaces. Frictional heat. Sparks. Static, electrical, mechanical. Spontaneous ignition. Chemical and physical chemical reactions. Radiant heat. 3C, hazardous material, slide 60. Storage and handling of liquefied petroleum gases. Regulated separately from flammable and combustible liquids. Does not apply to marine or pipeline terminals. NFPA standards for utility gas plants or low-pressure LP gas piping systems. Explosives and blasting agents. Explosive and blasting agents. B. General hazard. No person shall store, handle, or transport explosives or blasting agents when such constitutes an undue hazard to life. Storage of explosives. Transportation of explosives. Use of explosives and blasting agents. Specific types of explosives. General principles. No flames, fires, or firearms nearby. Competent person in charge of enforcement of safety precautions. Authorized persons take precautions to protect others. Care in storage and handling. Blasting only in daylight hours. Notify utilities before blasting. Loud warning before blast. Perforating safety. Electric blasting caps set off by current. Electrical storms. Dust storms. Power lines. Radio or radar. Recommendations. Keep non-essential personnel out of immediate area. Post warning signs and prohibit the use of radios, telephones, or navigational systems. Shut down non-essential electrical systems during gun arming operations. Notice of proposed rulemaking. April 13, 2007. Federal Register. Comments invited until June 13, 2007. Process Safety Management. Purpose: preventing or minimizing the consequences of catastrophic release of toxic, radioactive, flammable, or explosive chemicals. These releases may result in toxic, fire, or explosion hazards. Application: a process which involves a chemical at or above the specified threshold quantities listed in Appendix A. Highly hazardous chemicals, HHC, toxic, and reactives. A process which involves a flammable liquid or gas, as defined in 1910.1200 C, on site, in one location, in a quantity of 10,000 pounds or 4,535.9 kilograms or more. Employee participation. Written plan requires employee participation. Consult with employees and their representatives on the development of process hazard analysis. Provide to employees and their representatives access to process hazard analyses. Process safety information. Compile written process safety information before conducting any process hazard analysis. Enables employer and employees involved in the process to identify and understand the hazards posed by those processes. Hazards of the process. Technology of the process. The equipment in the process. Process hazard analysis. Must conduct a process hazard analysis, hazard evaluation, by listed methods. What if checklist, what if checklist, hazard and operability study, HAZOP, failure mode and effects analysis, fault tree analysis. Process hazard analysis. PHA. PHA must address hazards of process, any previous incident with catastrophic potential, engineering and administrative controls, and interrelationships, consequences of failure of controls, facility siting, human factors, qualitative evaluation of possible safety and health effects of failure of controls on employees. Process hazard analysis, PHA. PHA must be performed by a team with expertise in engineering and process operations. At least one employee who has experience and knowledge specific to the process being evaluated. One team member must be knowledgeable in the specific process hazard analysis methodology being used. Process hazard analysis. Employer establishes system to promptly address findings and recommendations and document resolution. Document what actions are to be taken. Develop a written schedule of when these actions are to be completed. Communicate the actions to operating, maintenance, and other employees who may be affected. Operating procedures. Develop and implement written operating procedures consistent with the process safety information and addresses at least initial setup, normal and temporary operations, normal and emergency shutdown procedures, operating limits and consequences of deviation, safety and health considerations. Procedures must be readily accessible to employees. Operating procedures continued. Develop and implement safe work practices to provide for the control of hazards during operations such as lockout, tagout, confined space entry, opening process equipment or piping, and control over entrance into a facility by maintenance, contractor, laboratory, or other support personnel. Work practices apply to contractors as well. Training. Emphasis on specific safety and health hazards of the process. Emergency operations, including shutdown. Safe work practices applicable to the employee's job task. Refresher training at least every 3 years. Keep records which contain the identity of the employee, the date of the training, and the means used to verify that the employee understood the training. Contractors. Applies to contractors performing maintenance or repair, turnaround, major renovation, or specialty work on or adjacent to a covered process. Employer responsibilities. Obtain and evaluate information regarding contract employers' safety performance and programs. Inform contract employers of the known potential fire, explosion, or toxic release hazards related to the contractor's work and the process. Incidental services not influencing process safety, exempt. Other sections of 1910.119. Pre-startup safety review, mechanical integrity, hot work permit, management of change, incident investigation, emergency planning and response, compliance audits, trade secrets. HAZWOPER. 1910.120 HAZWOPER. Hazardous Waste Operation and Emergency Response. cleanup operations, treatment, storage, and disposal, TSD, emergency operations for release of hazardous substances. This concludes Hazardous Materials Review.